to another episode of By the Numbers. Me and Duncan are laughing because he's just fucking tweeted out the most ridiculous enticement to watch the show ever. His tweet was, "By the numbers, you paid for it and now you'll watch it, or don't. Fuck off." Are you all right, man?
I mean, here's the problem. You can see how I've logically laid it out, haven't I? I'm like, well, they've paid for it, so they should watch it. But wait a minute, they have the option, don't have to. If you don't want to, fuck off then. What do you want from me?
Entertainment, obviously, which we always provide. I mean,
sadly, no one's threatened to kill anyone or shove a black dildo up my ass. So this week, it's going to be mainly CS. It's not as much.
I was going to say we might have to actually talk about the game. The good news is, though, Immortals is still an absolute clusterfuck, isn't it? So
that's never ending, then, is it?
Yeah, no, that really is. In the
end, people made a meme of it, but in the end, FNS looks like, you know, when people joke that like Donald Trump during that election was playing 11th dimensional Jenga with everyone. FNS did. One tweet, the most harmless joke ever, has set off the most ludicrous Brazilian chain reaction I've ever seen, where, like, at this point, like, fucking Kogu could be on Immortals or something, like, as a full-time player. Like, we've got to the point now where people are turning down buyouts for players you've never even heard of. Like,
I know.
What is going on? Is the entire Brazilian scene just imploding in? Was that, like, the missile into the fucking ventilation shaft of the Death Star that was Brazilian non-SKCS?
I think the worst thing about it is, though, like, well, which we'll get to in a second, is some of these fucking players ain't fit to lace the boots of like proper CS players. You know what I mean? And now, unfortunately, Immortals, the hand has been forced. You know, like to pick up players that really don't have any place being anywhere near this level of CS. And Bolts and Steel, fuck me. Someone get them the number for the Samaritans, because
it really is that scenario, isn't it? Like, no good deed goes unpunished. Like, their loyalty and professionalism is going to fuck them so hard. It's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, and I keep thinking, though, like, I'm waiting for the intervention. I'm waiting for somebody to come down and just say, do you know what? This major spot rule, yeah? Like, it's all well and good, but we can't allow this to happen. We can't let this stand. I got linked to an Instagram picture, and it was just FNX and the twins. And they're like, yeah, Corral Horde, just in a fucking festival, just partying, having a great time. Meanwhile, you juxtapose that with a picture of Bolts and Steel looking at their new teammates, and they're just like, fucking get me out. Get me out.
I'm sure it's like fucking FNX, who isn't even in their team, by the way, with like Henny, Lucas One, whichever one's which, one with the tattoo, one that isn't. That still doesn't help me, by the way. They look the same. Who gives a shit? He's just stood there with them, you know, same person. I wonder if they fuck with him, you know, probably pretend to be the other person. Classic trope from movies in which people are identical twins. Probably
dead ringers.
Yeah. That's probably how they got away with it for so long. Bolts and Steel, just like fucking MS Paint, like, tactics, what we're going to do here? Bloody hell.
What you can do, Sam, is you can find that picture of them all partying. I think it's on that Nell, that French journalist. He tweeted it out. So you bring that up, but or save it for later if you want. But look, let's start by talking about ELeague, because there was some actual high-level competitive CS being played there. And I suppose we should start by talking about something a bit more, you know, down to earth and normal than the horror that is Immortals at the moment. But so Group D unfolded.
Yeah.
And Group D was indeed the group of death when we looked at it on paper. You know, you had Astralis in there, you had SK Gaming in there, you had Team Liquid in there, and you had Heroic in there. And the way it panned out was certainly not the way any of us, apart from fucking Anders. Yeah, now what people need to remember is when Anders does predictions, he doesn't predict what he thinks will happen. He just says, if this was all a simulation and it was the most, and then he'll make his prediction based on that. And then you end up with, you know, if the ridiculous thing occurs, Anders looks like he's a genius. Everyone forgets the other 9 times out of 10 he's completely fucking wrong and just looks stupid. But let's start, I suppose, by talking about the big shock in the group, Heroic. They were able to go through, and it wasn't flukes, you know. They didn't go through by winning 2 best-of-1s. They had to go through the lower bracket and win a best-of-3, which they did over SK Gaming. And this is a fucking real feather in the cap for a team that had, you know, kind of a bit of a disappointing time at Mykonos after a good run of events. You know, they made it to the final of DreamHack Atlanta, etc. But then they had these like really good results online, and I wasn't paying any attention to that because I'm like you. Online CS it's more of a chore really for the players, so the results are all fucking skewed out of whack. LAN within the context of a tournament is where you judge teams, but yeah, these guys fucking showed up in a big way. And when you consider, you know, they had their veteran go off, like Modi was very good, Yugi and Nico were fucking unbelievable. It's just an amazing story. So I'll start by asking you, had you given Heroic any hope whatsoever to go through Group D? And as they did they change your mind about them a little bit?
No, I actually thought obviously when you say someone has no chance, it's hyperbole. You know, obviously everyone has some level of chance, but put it this way, it basically was no chance. It was like, you know, 5% or something ridiculous, because all three teams there, I think, are better. I still think are better now, actually, to be honest. And then you have to remember with the format, if they go through, you'd at least assume it's going to be the two best of ones. Maybe they can upset teams that way. No, they had to go ahead and win in the best of three against SK. So that's no joke. So when you consider they were either going to be playing SK or Team Liquid or Astralis, probably in at least one best of three, I think it was very unlikely they were going to go through. And I have to say, yes, they played probably the best CS they've played in a long time, but I don't even know if they believe that's replicable, you know.
Well, I don't know, actually. I mean, they were really, really confident. They were I mean, obviously, everyone talks a good game before they go into the matches, but they were calling it before they went in. They were like, look, we're definitely going to get out this group. We've got the belief, we've got the confidence. Their map pool looked surprisingly deep, you know, like they can obviously play train, and maps that I wouldn't normally associate with them seem to be going their way. And I guess one of the things that we didn't talk about so much, I didn't see Fetish there, but apparently Fetish has been doing a lot of coaching with the guys behind the scenes. And obviously, if people remember Fetish from back when he was playing, you know, he was a very accomplished in-game leader across the span of his career. And ultimately, it was kind of his inability to adapt from that kind of more authoritarian leadership style, very similar to Zeus, honestly, that saw him kind of effectively retire because he was dead weight on the server in terms of fragging, but he wasn't getting the results because he couldn't get players buy-in. But as a coach, incredibly well suited to it, so it seems. And a lot of people behind the scenes have been saying, you know, look, he's definitely been heavily involved in this Heroic lineup. So you know, I just wanted a few thoughts about that. So I never knew if you rated Fetish at all in terms of you know, his career in the same way you do, say, for example, an Existence.
I think he's a really tricky one to gauge in CSGO, because I do think when he was with the Copenhagen Wolves lineup going into Dignitas, basically the core that is Astralis now, like, I can't say that he was terrible in as much as, like, they were famous for having very, very good CT sides, but most of those players were pretty young, and a lot of them actually didn't have that much experience. They had a little bit at the end of Source, some of them, but they weren't like the best players in Denmark or anything. So I've got to give you credit. If something works consistently in the team, I'm sure you have something to do with that. I feel as though he did kind of like coach them in that respect, the CT setups. But it's just that they were famous. They were almost like an early meme for how bad their T sides were. And I do think that in that sense, like, it's very easy to look at the fact that Carrigan came in, and that's one area where immediately he like elevated them much more, and they basically became one of the number one teams at that point in time, just off that, you know, added that element to their game. So that certainly makes Fetish look not very good. And then obviously he went to the other Dignitas, which is the lesser one that was down because there were TSM at the time in the original team. And that was where he very quickly went out of the team, and they took MSL as the in-game leader. So it doesn't look good because, again, another way we try to kind of gauge how good you are as an in-game leader is usually we like test you on your next teams and see how do they match up relative to the talent. And he didn't do that. Someone else also kind of out-coached him there in that sense, because someone else took over him as in-game leader and did a better job with them. So I do think he had some issues with how the T-siders played in CSGO. I don't know how his style was in Source, but people who were in Source told me essentially he just was one of those people, perhaps like Existence in the early days, who tried to just keep doing it the same way. And they kind of thought, even if they didn't always get results, like, oh, everyone will come around to my way, you know, eventually this will work out, which is kind of like a theme with in-game leaders. A lot of them can be quite stubborn, you know, if they think they're right. So the downside is, I think he definitely has some qualities. I think he's probably ideally suited to be a coach. I think that's probably the best role. Like, you look at him through his career, seems like he often took young talents and then they became good under him, you know. So I wonder if maybe that's it. Like on this sort of a team, obviously the main problem they have is it's all young talents. Like they haven't actually got really any sort of like established young star because obviously they lost Valde, who was the main guy in that sense.
Yeah.
So I think it helps a lot to have someone with a lot of experience in that respect and maybe can assess your game and figure out, because a lot of, for me, coaching young stars is just figuring out simple things like, this part of your game is brilliant, but just cut out this element here, or maybe you're in slightly the wrong role for what you think you should do, you know, because a lot of young players have very wacky ideas of what they think their role should be and how they want to play the game, you know. So I think he has value as a coach. It's just that, listen, the Danish seed is fucking deep with good in-game leaders, and I just don't think he fit in CSGO.
Yeah, I mean, it's unreal, actually. With the emergence of Heroic, if we can call it that, Danish CS right now is probably in the best place it's ever been. I mean, North have finally clicked and got themselves together. Astralis are always going to be there or thereabout. You've got Heroic, but also you've got these like kind of players on the periphery as well, players who aren't necessarily associated with tier 1 teams yet. Then you've got all these fucking coaches. It's insane that a country with like a population of 5 million has managed to produce so many high-level CS players and coaches and in-game leaders. It's unbelievable. And with that said, and that in mind, I got to say, I think Heroic will be pretty pleased with the way the playoff draw went, because by coming through the group the way they did, they have to go up against North. Now, I'll say one thing about, MSL. He's always had kind of this like weird mental block for certain players and certain matchups. I have no idea if anyone in Heroic will sort of trigger that, but I do know enough to say that when Danes play Danes, like there's like a game within a game, you know? It's kind of like how the French teams used to be. Like you would have very games who would go completely undefeated against anyone else, and then they play some like French team who weren't even necessarily in the top 10 in Europe, and they'd fucking lose, you know? Yeah. So I think Heroic would be secretly pretty happy about North, and unthinkably, you know, they could get to the semi-finals of ELeague just predicated on 2 best-of-3s.
Yeah, especially because like I've noticed the interesting thing for me about the Danish scene, because it's not always the same in every domestic scene in this sense. Like, for example, if you ever look at the domestic scenes where one team is indisputably dominant, so 2 obvious CSGO examples is VP and whoever the second best Polish team is, like there's never any scenario generally where they're getting upset in that sense. They used to win every qualifier back in 1.6. The one in CSGO, it's probably the most obvious one, is SK dominates the Brazilian scene. It doesn't matter how good Immortals is, they almost never beat SK. So in those senses, I think part of the reason why is you look at the top team and the second best team, and they're very different makeups of team and style of play. And that's, to me, part of it, because all the other scenes where it's very close. So the Swedish scene famously has been very, very close forever. They always would have the same scenario, you know. The number 1 team in the world could be Swedish, but they could lose to the number 2 and the number 3 Swedish team. And I think that for me comes when your scenes like a very homogenous style, like everyone plays the same sort of a style. And so to me, that's why I actually would go ahead and say, in the teams that made it to the round of 8 of ELeague, except if they could have, I mean, I guess they couldn't because they both came second. I guess the only one I would have said in the round of 8, I would have had them beating otherwise, would be like Envious, but they were both second. But of the teams who are pretty good, I think North's the dream matchup at this point, because North has a very similar style overall, philosophy on the game, obviously. They definitely have some of the players have played against each other over the last few years. So I feel like almost everything's primed for you to have a chance at the upset. Might still not happen. North's a better team, but you know exactly how they play. You can study the fuck out of them. Yeah. You've already played their players, which crucially takes away like the fear element. You know, you kind of, if someone like Nico and Joey, they in theory should be thinking, great, I want to prove I'm better than whoever it might be in Valde, for example, obviously a player who's on their team. So I think, it's primed for that to be the ultimate chance for an upset. I still would go ahead and say I think North will win it, but I could at least see that being one where they could come in with something that's a surprise, like they've scouted a particular map. And obviously that's exactly where a classic theme, MSL will go ahead and do some pick that they can also play. And then, listen, it's got a better team, so you should win, but that opens the door for that potential upset, doesn't it?
And while we're still on Danish CS, Astralis went through in 2. They topped the group 16-11 against Team Liquid, and they smashed Heroic on TBS. It was another one of those days. I know you know about this from being in the green room, where it's like, fucking hell, you've just got 30 minutes to fill at the end. You're like, Moses, here's some juggling balls. Go do your thing.
Get your fucking shine box, Moses. Nah, we love him. That's not his relationship at all. Definitely not. Billy Bats or whatever his name was.
No chance. He's not going to get peshied. Over in South Africa, I think at the moment, isn't he? Moses.
I hope he's not very tired. Because of the time zones and that. Yeah.
So yeah, Moses is out there anyway. So look, the reason we're talking about Moses and things that are probably getting cut from the VOD yet again is that Astralis smashed Heroic 16-2. I mean, it was unbelievably one-sided, and it was on train. We thought this might be a chance for Heroic because they'd already shown against SK Gaming that they could play this map and win against solid opposition. Didn't go that way. So it was kind of, again, it was like classic Astralis. Both of their games looked too easy for them. They went out massively ahead against Team Liquid. Like 16-11 really flatters Team Liquid, honestly, for how they played in that best of one. And I don't know, because I still don't get the impression Astralis are back, despite 2 impressive results to go through to the playoffs. I still think they're going to falter, and I've said it on this show, so there's no point in trying to recant it. I think they're going to be one of the top tier teams that drop off into the lower end of the top 10 now.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's giving them a massive favor is that SK is having all these problems, because I do think that while SK struggles, and while at the moment we've got this bizarre scenario where some of the teams don't qualify for LANs. This is actually one of the things that's a bit weird, Rich. That why are there all these tournaments at the moment where teams like G2 and North aren't getting the invites? That's the problem, is because they do it so many months in advance, isn't it? So G2 and North are indisputably, if you just want to look at the last 2 months, they're absolutely some of the best teams we've got in the game. But because it kind of hasn't caught up with the ranking, because it takes a few months for that stuff to kick in, it means that you still have all these LANs where they don't qualify, but then you look at the teams invited, and it's like Virtus Pro and Na'Vi, and you're like, what? But that's because they did the invites 2-3 months ago, isn't it? So you end up in a bizarre scenario where I think for Astralis rather, you're getting a bunch of LANs where I think, you would have already dropped off. If you put the top 10 teams at a LAN right now, I just have to say I don't think Astralis is winning it. They maybe can make the odd semi, but I agree. I think they're on a downturn. There's no real logical reason they can go the opposite way and return to number one, So, I'm not really convinced by this performance here. I actually think Heroic did them a massive favor beating SK. So, after beating Team Liquid, which, listen, they match up well against Team Liquid. It was pretty good style for them. You just get to play Heroic for the best of one to go to the playoffs, whereas I think that's very different if you play SK Gaming.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. Like I say, I think I didn't see what was different. It was like you say, it was more of a matchup thing stylistically.
Well, I mean, one thing that was ridiculous is if you look at the stats that Glaive had. So over the 2 maps, he averaged 1 kill per round. Yeah, fuck off. He is literally here's the thing. He's a very weird player, okay? Because people always say as an in-game leader, he's a good fragger, and he is in as much as if you watch the actual set T rounds, he can get kills in a way that most in-game leaders wouldn't. But his actual fragging is not very good. Statistically, he's not a good fragger because he's like someone like Angel doesn't play entry. That's the whole point. That's why he can get so many frags as the in-game leader, So he's a weird player in that sense because actually he's not that great in terms of raw firepower, I don't think.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Liquid actually start to move away from Overpass. I don't think it's a map they're gonna necessarily, click on. Whenever I've seen them play it against high-level teams, it just hasn't. They don't look the same as the teams.
Well, here's one of the reasons why, because I actually looked it up, because it's true. That's been one of the key maps that they not only have lost, but they've lost heavily. All the other maps they're playing, they haven't fucking great games, close. Even when they lost to SK and this Decider, what a fantastic map. You don't have any problems with how they played. But you look at all their Overpass games, right? If you just go and on hltv.org, you can actually check someone's stats by map. You can pick them one map they play. JDM's worst map is Overpass. This guy gets single-digit frags on that map. And we know that's a map where, ideally, your AWPer doesn't have to be the star of it, but he can have a massive impact.
Oh, sure.
And I notice his style of AWPing just doesn't work at all on the CT side of that map. He's somebody who just gets exploited all day long. Because I actually feel like that's something where people are kind of behind the meta on it. Everyone thinks it's 2014 or something, where you just put your AWPer on, the A site, and he just kills everyone who comes there. That's not really how it works anymore. You have to kind of have good reads on when to rotate, and you have to have special setups, and you have to have someone who's aggressive who goes forwards, and then you take a pick when he comes out. And so it's actually very tricky. That's why I'm always so impressed when I watch Device or when SK had Fallen very good on the map. The fact that they can be so consistently good just shows that they're actually not just good AWPers, they're very good at that map specifically.
Yeah, and it happened to get, against SK Gaming as well as Astralis. Absolutely on point with your analysis there. JDM down the score charts was bottom on both times he played Overpass. 8 kills against SK Gaming, which, look, it's like you say, as an AWP, all you got to do is be solid. Get your picks, make retakes easier if it's needed, from heaven or whatever, depending on the site. But yeah, it just wasn't happening at all. And I think now with kind of like nobody's really nailed Inferno for me, the new Inferno. Like I'm watching some teams.
Team Liquid's been pretty good actually. That's been one of the impressive parts actually, that they've gotten a lot of wins on that map.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I think now they need to kind of reprioritize their veto order for me. They did pick it first against SK Gaming, but I don't think that was predicated on Liquid being supremely confident on the map and it being a first pick for them. I think it's everyone knows SK Gaming are dog shit on Inferno. Like, absolutely, it's criminal. And I guess we can segue into just talking a little bit about Liquid and SK. While we're here. So I'll bring up the SK Gaming point. Obviously, they didn't go through the group. Hugely disappointed. I have never seen an SK Gaming sort of look vulnerable in map vetoes before. And at the moment, as long as Nuke remains their first ban and people are picking Inferno against them, they're giving up a map every best of 3 right now, because of they I don't know if it's stubbornness. I don't know if it's that players aren't listening. I don't know if they're not bothering, because there's all sorts of rumors now that there might be another organizational move or something like this with SK Gaming. There's like a lot of rumors going on behind the scenes about SK right now. So I don't know if they're distracted, but like you cannot afford to just give a map away. You cannot be that bad on Inferno. Like, if you're going to ban Nuke, if you're going to make Nuke, you must ban.
Well, especially because, like, I think there's an element of fool's gold to that map, because what's bizarre about it is, I think the reason why they embraced it so much when they had that revival, when they worked Phelps into the lineup and they started winning all those tournaments, is Inferno was a map that was working really well for them. They were winning it all the time. And part of the reason why is it's a very good map for Cold Zero. He just seems to be fucking amazing. But the downside of that is they have like legit 2 or 3 players who just, in the current meta of how you play that map, do not know how to play the map. Like, they actively make incorrect decisions over and over again. And knowing how this team is and how Fallen is, it's not, there's no way he's not telling them this stuff or saying, like, let's switch some stuff up or let's rotate something here. And so I have to say, on that map, they look broken. And that's an example of where we can tie the 2 points in. So with Liquid letting people pick Overpass all day and SK doing it on this particular one, this is an example of where sometimes you've got to give up your permaban to dare the other team to pick it. Like, Liquid's permaban, okay, is cash, right? Well, when you're playing SK and you're playing Astralis and these teams, right, if they pick cash, it's actually probably better for you than if they pick Overpass. Like, even if you don't play the map, you're probably better off just trying to switch to that, see how it goes for a while. You might have a better chance, because at the moment, you're not getting any wins on Overpass. So same for SK. If I'm SK, I'm just banning Inferno at this point in time, at least against the top teams. Maybe play it against lower teams who you think aren't good on it. Okay, fine. But at the moment, like, they get exploited the same ways over and over again. And it's actually, I think it's one of those examples of where brute forcing something will speed up how soon the team breaks up. Because if you keep making Phelps, who is your young star, who in theory you want to be there the long time, like, yeah, he's not the main player now, but you want him to be there so that one day, let's say Fur decides to retire in 2 years, that's when Phelps is going to come forwards. You've already got your star player, no buyouts, but he's going to be out of this team if you keep playing Inferno over and over again, make him look like an idiot, when it's just that one map he seems to struggle on.
Yeah, well, actually, just to give you a sort of a read on what was going on with Phelps, he looked fucking miserable, dude. Like, the entire sort of weekend he was there, he didn't really, like, I can't think of a time where I saw him smiling, like, even when they were winning rounds. His performance was absurdly bad, given we all know how high his skill ceiling is. Cold Zero still delivered, Fur delivered. They were kind of the backbone of the team. Fallen was missing on 1 or 2 maps, if we're being honest about it. But Taco has been in a bad run of form. Taco's been the weak link in the chain. They get to these best of 3 series where they're scraping by, and they're scraping by because Phelps was fucking nowhere at ELeague. And it's like you say, I if I'm him, I'm thinking like, holy shit, when I came, I was the missing piece in the jigsaw. This was going to be the next wave of greatness for SK Gaming. This was like, I believe you compared them to the all-star team that the Lakers had, you know, 3-peat fucking Lakers, that they were just fucking, you know, a godlike roster. Well, right now, they need a tactical adjustment because I think Phelps could potentially be looking at the door. Or nobody wants to be the make weight in the team, especially when you've got a support player.
And the killer for me was, in this tournament, like Cold Zero was right back to being insanely good, did everything you need to do. Fur had some massive maps, obviously against Team Liquid, he was amazing. So if those two players play at their peak, that's what before were like the initial conditions, like, right, we win the tournament then. They didn't make the playoffs. So unfortunately, as much as you don't want to just look at the people who did badly, they did literally like throw away an amazing performance from the star players. So you have to kind of look at those other elements and say, what do you change here? So either you do something like we say, and first things first, Band-Aid, get Inferno out of there. Let's stop playing that. And then let's see, by the way, if we have similar issues on other maps, now we know we have to do a roster move. But Inferno's not working for you. And then secondly, I have to say, one of the things about the Brazilians, which has been, they've done a really bad job of, this might sound weird, but even if you are on the chopping block in a team, right, you don't give it away to the public. Like, you don't make it obvious to your opponents, to the whole scene that there's internal issues. What you do is you're a professional. You keep this stiff upper lip or whatever. You power through it. You play as if you're not on the chopping block. That's what Zipnix did to stay in the TSM team at the time. That's what a professional does. Unfortunately, because a lot of these Brazilian guys are so emotional, I have to say, when you're telling me that even in the set you could kind of see that says to me he knows shit's going on and that he's probably out the door.
Yeah,
and we've seen it in some of the French teams before, right? I would say they're the closest analog. Very passionate players who play with their heart on their sleeve. So as a result, it doesn't matter that Shocks didn't get kicked from Envious till like the summer. You saw him a month and a half before, and he was like in like the fucking warm ups, and he wasn't even trying in the games. And you'd already know in your mind, like you're gone, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, Envious was the worst example I ever saw of that. Do you remember that game? I think it was against Cloud9, where on the T side, on Cobblestone, they just rushed B every round, force ball every round, rush B,
and they only lost like 16-14 or something. It was almost ridiculous examples of like almost the whole team just saying "fuck this." Yeah. Because if you remember, the game took place after they'd already had the secret meeting to agree to make the player change.
Yeah.
Which again, by the way, I don't think that will be too much of a coincidental comparison to this SK scenario. Because when you combine the SK scenario with the fact that every other Brazilian team right now is getting torn in half, it makes it just seem like, well, what a fortunate coincidence if we were to need to take another player.
Yeah, right. So look, just some final thoughts about the ELeague Group D then. There was obviously Team Liquid in there. A bit disappointing. I know you've been talking about their potential. One thing I will say is, and I don't know if this is the pundits doing pundit things or if it's a genuine assessment, because a lot of people have talked quite glowingly about Team Liquid's potential. But even though they lost and never really looked too impressive for me here at ELeague, everybody was kind of saying, yeah, well, it was a tough group and they were really competitive. They only lost to SK Gaming in overtime, remember? They could have won that map with, and doing that kind of thing, where everyone was saying there's so many positives here. This actually proves that Team Liquid are competitive, even though they're not in the playoffs. So I don't know what to make of that assessment. I don't know if you would agree with the people that are saying that or whether you were disappointed, whether you felt Team Liquid should have gone through.
No, because here's the thing. When I watched that series there, that's one of the rare examples of a series where I would actually say to the losing team, don't even worry about that. Like, you played really well on your maps and the maps that you were meant to have a chance on. You were either there or you were in with a chance, Someone else had an amazing game, and that's part of why you lost. Yeah, you're going to change some things as you naturally do, but I definitely don't think there was any panic. I thought they were really good. In fact, that's the thing to me that's most impressive about Liquid, is that in the wins and the losses, they managed to play their style. Like, that's one of the things I've always thought NA teams were so whack for, is like either they have an amazing game and it's like everything went right for us, and it's like, well, that's not going to continue, is it? Or they have the game where they just come out flat, like when Cloud9 played FaZe at ESL New York and just get completely rolled and have no chance whatsoever. That's not happened. Liquid in all these games, pretty much, except for a couple of those maps in the final against FaZe, where some of them had never played a massive stage match. Yeah, aside from that, they're looking pretty solid in all these games. So I think they're right there. I think they're in really good position right now.
So we'll move on from there. Should we get?
By the way, if anyone wants a recommendation, was watch the if you didn't watch the game, just watch the third map of the Liquid SK game. That was the Mirage one. It's a really good game. Like it's like both teams just play fantastically. It's one where it's not people just making stupid mistakes and that wins the other team the game. No, people have to make really great. Like Fur has tons of outplays where otherwise Liquid wins around, probably wins the game. Really great game to watch.
So I guess we can segue into the Immortals situation. That's kind of like the breaking big news story at the moment, and fuck me, it is beyond anything I think I've seen. Like I can't understand. Like, listen, after SK Gaming and this party team and the two remaining players in Immortals, whatever you want to say about Brazilian CS, I think there might be some untapped potential in the same way that Cold Zero was, like some phenom out there. But it's none of these guys that are being talked about, unfortunately. Let's start with and I saw you retweet this, actually. So Immortals came out and were like, don't worry, guys, we got ZQKS. Now, Sam, if you go to Duncan's Twitter, you'll see an image. Bring this up. It is ridiculous. Like, this guy is laughing all the fucking way to the bank, because I do not see how he is going to hold his own. Keep in mind, this isn't a young player who's learning the ropes that you might forgive. This is a 25-year-old established Brazilian professional. If I remember rightly, I think he's played in other iterations of the game. I certainly know his name from prior to this. It's ridiculous. Like, just looking at the score, he's like, every time when he had his run on Ghost, and Ghost, obviously playing low-level NA teams. They're playing Rogue. They're playing NRG. They're playing Luminosity, right? He is going negative in all of these games. All of these games. He's barely breaking positive scores when he's playing, like, Quetzal from fucking Mexico. And in Brazil, he wasn't exactly gangbusters either, It's really perplexing that this guy is seen as the solution. And this isn't the case of like, we're bringing in some legendary tactician or anything like that. There's been no intimation that there's going to be another in-game leadership change. Looks like they're going to stick with bolts for now. So this guy is literally being brought in on his merits or his which are none that I can see, or his chemistry with these players. Now, I did see Noah on Twitter allude to the fact that he wanted some other players, and apparently they were too expensive. He said some of these organizations want buyouts that are 10 times, the value of the contract that's outstanding on the players and this sort of thing. So I'll just ask you about ZQKS, and then we'll talk about the players that they didn't get, like Bully's not so special prize,
Sure. Well, I mean, I remember him when he was on the Kaboom Keat Stars team with Fallen. Right. And famously, one of the reasons why, for anyone who wasn't around in 2015, when that team rose up and they were making top 8 at all the majors, they were having upset wins over top teams. The reason why no one looked at them like, one day this team will be number one, is because they had Fur and that was it. Fur was like a really sick player. And then Fallen and the rest were like, okay, maybe they can like play together as a team, but there was no firepower. And one of the reasons why is this ZQS or whatever the fuck his name is. This guy was like a terrible AWPer. He was the main AWPer of the team. Fallen was just a rifler. And that switch is one of the sort of 2 or 3 steps that made SK, as they now are called, take the steps up to become a world-class team. Switch Fallen to the AWP, which happened around the same time. I think that might have happened around when they got Cold Zero, I think. So it was just before a few months before the switch with FNS and Taco. And this was one of the key integral moments, because that then started to empower Fallen. And then, these were the steps they went on. So anytime you essentially being removed from the role that you're doing makes a team like exponentially better, you probably were pretty bad at that role. And then he is one of those guys where, I forget who tweeted this. It might have been Lopez. It sounds like a Lopez kind of tweet. Someone just said something along the lines of, like, essentially, this guy's entire career is just having fluent Portuguese. Like, because he's got that quality, right, which everyone in the esports industry should be able to appreciate, which is because the first 10 or 15 years were just people failing. You actually are considered the most experienced person, even if you failed at every project you did in esports. And so you end up being there's a million Scott Valencia, all these guys, where they were in big projects that failed. But if someone's hiring a new person to be a project manager, what's mad is your resume still looks the best because you have all these past accomplishments. So what's mad is him being on the bad versions of those teams does count as an accomplishment once you get past SK and Immortals. So I kind of do feel like I have no idea what the logic is on looping back on him. Like, I will say Immortals in general has done some pretty interesting moves, like Steel and Bolts have obviously kind of reinvented their careers there. The difference is, I didn't ever think they were terrible on the Kaboom and Keydstars teams. They just had some issues and maybe even some nerve issues, whereas ZQS literally looked crap in almost every team I've ever seen him playing. So I don't really know the lot. It does feel like, as much as Noah wants to say it's not the case that, players were just too expensive. Well, then why have you gone here? Why have you gone that's like saying, I can afford the new Yeezys. Just got these old used Converse. One owner only used them every once a week from the charity shop. It's like, why have you got them then? You haven't got money for fire kicks, have you?
I like Converse.
No, but not used ones.
Maybe.
From the charity shop. That literally.
I take my Converse where I find them, Duncan.
Yeah, well.
So anyway, the Team 1 CEO...
Conversely, Immortals think this guy's good.
It's not your best work.
Yeah. Ironically, some of the other members in the team could be called Dr. J, famous basketball player who's associated with Converse.
So the Team 1 CEO, Alexandre Cacavel Perez. Duncan, come on. Let's get through this.
Kick the Cacavellas.
Yeah, there you go. He said that Immortals were put off because he had the asking price for two players called Maluk with a 3 and TRK. And he, on Twitter, kind of in broken English, I think he had someone translate it for him, basically was alluding to the fact that, look, I've got to put these buyouts in place. Otherwise, what is the point of us developing talent? Like, I've got to have the security to know my players are going to stay, or we're going to be properly compensated. Now, I agree with that in principle. The question then becomes, where do you draw the line on what is a fair buyout? And we've famously talked about this with Electronic. I actually think for Electronic, I think the 6-figure buyout is perfectly reasonable in the current market, honestly. If Scream's going to go for $150,000 or whatever it was, allegedly, although I think they only paid half of it in the end, then Electronic is a 6-figure player. He's a fucking beast right now, and if Navi don't want to pay it, well, more fool them, because look what it's doing to them. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But this is where it gets interesting for me, because Slingshot reported today that it was $85,000 for each player. So $170,000 for the pair, Now, who the fuck are these guys? Like, straight up, like, maybe Maluk and TRK are fucking balling out of control and I missed it. But $85,000 fucking dollars. Meanwhile, Navi are trying to be like, yeah, this Electronic's only worth $40,000. Like, fuck off. People have got to understand what the market is. And I think this is a big problem. There needs to be a record of the transfer fees somewhere. Somebody's got to, in the same way that when you try and explain to players that if you make your salary known, it actually will help you all eventually, provided you don't get egos and go insane. It's the same with buyouts. You can't look, in my mind, and again, give me your fucking opinion. $85,000 is too much for these players, and I understand in principle what the CEO is playing, but effectively, what you've done here is you've denied two of your players who are now going to be really disheartened a move of their dreams. And you haven't made any money off the bat of it, whereas you could have cut those buyouts in half, done very well for yourself on what I'm sure are low-level players that you haven't invested in, that you've just picked up and signed to a contract that have this particular clause in. It's not like well, we scouted him and we went to the combine and then we fucking had him and then we bought his mother a house so they'd sign with us. This isn't American fucking sports. You just went to him and said, hey, do you want to play pro for my org? And they went, yeah, we'll sign any old shit. That's that. That's all that happened. So the idea of $85,000 compensation for that seems a bit fucking stupid to me.
Like, to me, the bigger issue isn't even the buyout. It's if I had to speculate, it's that it seems like the genius move by all these smaller orgs is when you sign a player, you make sure it's like a 2 or 3 year contract. That's the killer move. Because to me, market forces will naturally make people have to agree to reasonable buyouts if each contract is for a year. Because let's say you come to the guy and his contract ends in 4 months, right? Right, at that point in time, the team owner knows, right, I can make you stay. I can ask for £1 million as a buyout and I know they won't pay. But then he knows he only gets you for 4 months more. So now he has to weigh up, is it worth getting money now and letting you go and just starting over? Or am I really going to get so much out of those 4 months, knowing you'll leave anyway, that I'll turn down having the money? Now, a lot of them, I think, will just they'll make a shrewd deal. They'll get some money now and go better some money now, and we have to move on anyway. And likewise, the same scenario will happen for the teams. They will say to themselves, like, if Electronic's deal was up in 3 months, Na'Vi can say to themselves, right, here's the real question. If we have him on our team, do we win a major and a couple of tournaments? And actually, you know what? Suddenly it's worth 200k just to get him 3 months early. Or if we really want to save the money, when we wait the 3 months and we have to live with the consequences. I think if everyone had a 1 year contract, it would logically make sense in all regards. The problem is, if you have a 3 year contract, it's not like pro sports, because in pro sports, the entire market can't triple or halve in the next 3 years. So when you sign that contract, you actually know you've gotten a reasonable deal and that it will last a certain amount of time, There's never a scenario, whereas in esports, if you sign a contract with a small org, they might not even be around in 2 years. CS might have just gone downhill to where you don't know when you should take them. I just feel like it doesn't make sense for anyone. The only people I think it makes sense for to have the 3 year contract is like, I don't mind if someone like FaZe is like, right, you know what, Olaf, I'm going to buy you for this much. Assuming he was bought, I don't know. I think he might have just left his contract. Right, so let's say you buy a player or a Nico. Okay, we know they bought Nico, right? If you're buying Nico, yeah, maybe then you sign that guy to a 3 year contract. You're a mega org. You're going to be there a long time. If I've bought you for this much, I at least want to know I've got minimum 2 or 3 years for you. But it just doesn't make sense that these small orgs have contracts like that, to my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Nico is a good example of this, because I don't know if people know this, and I'm sure I'll get messages for talking out of school or whatever, but I don't give a fuck. It's the realest podcast in CS, Duncan. So let's keep it real. I'm sure you heard the same shit I heard. Whenever people wanted to get Nico, because you remember famously he ringed for G2 and he was on and off the Mouse Sports bench, they were being told we would not sell Nico for less than $1 million. That was the word on the street, right? Now that's, again, fucking stupid. There isn't a singular player that is going to get you a return on $1 million invested. And it was almost as if the buyout was just set so unrealistically high just to basically limit the player's freedom of movement and opportunity, right?
Well, no, here's the thing. I think you've nailed a point there, right? Which is a very key. It's like it's a nuanced point, but it's the entire crux of the problem that I didn't actually explain as a feature. When I said that if it's a 1 year contract, because bearing in mind, obviously, in a 1 year contract, very unlikely you're actually asking for the guy a month after he signed. You probably are partway into the contract. The good part about that there is that, in most cases for the smaller team, it's never going to be worth saying, right, you can go for free and I'll get nothing, but I'll get 3 months of you playing because I'm a small team. But the problem is, in this scenario, it was entirely against the interests of that Mouse Sports owner to let Nico go. He was their entire team and was so good, much like Electronic and Flipside, that he is making the team's results maybe 2 or 3 times better than they should be possible to get. Therefore, bizarre as it might sound, actually it's not worth it to that guy to sell Nico for even 700k if it means he can get into some majors and get some sticker money and then get a bunch of big placings and some sponsor deals off that. It's actually at that point in time not worth it. It's better for him to say, no amount of money will count. I will keep this guy at my low level because essentially I just don't have him anymore. So that's the only option I care about. That in that scenario, there's no market force acting on that guy, is there? Because he knows he's got you over a barrel, hasn't he?
Yeah, and that's another thing to actually consider here. I think Immortals, right? Because famously, they're a venture capitalist funded organization. Again, people know this. This isn't revealing any big secrets. They've had lots of money dropped into them and constant, new rounds of funding dropped into them. They've had a lot of money spent to get them to the point where they are now with, high-level League of Legends players. They're moving into the Overwatch League. They came in and wholesale picked up a team from Tempo Storm and have gone on to do very well. And they've continually dug away to get to the majors, paying very lucrative and competitive salaries. They've done it in other games, maybe that aren't as high profile as the ones we're talking about here. Immortals has spent big to get to where it is today. Now, if you're an organization like Team One, right? And again, I mean, I want to think if this is right. Let me just have a look, because I'm pretty sure if you go on to Team One's Twitter, I just want to see if it says this. I saw an organization the other day that claimed to be the oldest in esports.
Come on, where's it saying it's from?
No, it can't be these guys. No, it's not these guys. I'll find that for you. We'll laugh about that off air. But anyway, so when you're an organization like that, like Team One, who obviously are way down the pecking order in the pantheon of esports organizations, obviously you're going to milk it, aren't you? It was like if Manchester City come to buy your star player from your team. Yeah, you weren't going to compete with Manchester City in the league anyway, right? But they got fucking money to burn. So you fucking up the price, don't you? If it was a regular team that was interested and you wanted to sell, those players probably would go for 10,000, 20,000. But it's motherfucking money bags Immortals, isn't it? So everyone's wrecking them, So I think that's a factor. And again, the players aren't going to be happy having to stay at Team One. And Winston's not happy, Noah Winston's not happy having to fucking drop 170,000 to get very ordinary players just to shore up his roster. And Team One don't get the money, and now they're going to have two unsettled players. I can't think of I don't know who's won in this outcome at all.
Well, that's the stupidest part, isn't it? Is that in actual sports, the reason why, so for example, in the American sports system where you have a max contract, where you can't go past this amount of salary you can pay a player, then in that scenario, the reason why famously fans will complain like, how's this player got a max contract? He's not worth it. But that's because enough teams are interested in him. So one of them's going to offer him the max. And if he wants, he can go with that one, whether it's competitive or not. And that way, smaller teams can be competitive with the bigger team by saying, well, I'll offer you the most you can offer, right? The problem in this scenario is, like you said, there's only one team trying to buy these players. There's no bidding war going on here. You're supposed to be negotiating. Now, logically, there is a very good reason why this team should want to sell their players to Immortals. The amount of money they will get is a lot more than they will get from even benefiting from those players playing for them. So they should be incentivized to want to negotiate. Immortals, for obvious reasons, wants the players and should want to negotiate to not have to pay the most. I don't understand this idea that you're like, my all I'm going to take is 2 times what you want to give me. Well, I won't pay that. I'm standing by it. Like, there's no other team coming in. It doesn't make sense, does it? It just shows how. I mean, I have to say this in general in esports. Even people in the business often have a very just weird understanding of how the economics work. Like the number of people who think, I'm not just talking about fans here. Like for example, a team like Immortals, they'll go, wait a minute, fucking Lionsgate, that guy who's the Memphis Grizzlies corner, they've got millions. Yeah, they're a business, you daft cunt. They're not just spending it. It's not pocket money, is it? They're not going, oh, well, I've spent all my pocket money this month, bought this player. Yeah, they have to be able to make a return on that and run their business, etc. They're not taking the 10 million and going, right, promise me you're only going to spend 4 million on shit Brazilian players. The rest of it, you can waste. Like, fucking hell, come on.
Yeah, the whole thing is ridiculous. Like I said, there's no winners in this. Because Immortals have also confirmed, I mean, this has been in the works for ages, so this is no surprise, but, Horvy's finally been cleared to play. He's got his visa now. And if you remember, Horvy being added to the roster was one of the things that originally triggered the fuck out of the twins, Lucas and Henny. They didn't like it.
Teetotaler, is he?
Yeah, probably. Well, no, he's
found Jesus, has he?
Yeah. No, he's 19, so he's actually not old enough to drink in America, is he? So that's probably.
I don't know the laws, but I'm going to go ahead and guess in Brazil, probably fine.
So yeah, I mean, like Horvy, he's a decent player. He's certainly better than ZQKS, and no doubt about that. So, but it's still hard looking at this roster now. Still no confirmed fifth either. They might have to use Zach as a fucking stand-in. I think Destiny was the guy that's been standing in for them in league matches. Who again, not
literally meant the fucking guy.
No.
He's just in there like the thing about your bloody white privilege is.
Yeah, not him. Not him. The Brazilian player.
Listen, mate, he would play for like $2,000 a month. You know, you could probably get him for that.
Hey, he changed his whole politics for less than that. So
when I call you all racial slurs, that's just ironic, and I'm quoting someone myself earlier in secret
on all those bloody hours of streaming that I used to do. But anyway, so they got that Destiny Brazilian player. Who again, he's all right, he's decent. I don't know if they'll make that a permanent move or whatever, but assuming that is the fucking 5, I mean, ye gods, you go from being in a fucking major final, and then one night of fucking, have you met my friend Gary Goodtimes, and it's all just come crumbling down. You know?
Here's the thing, Rich. Here's the conspiracy theory.
All right, go on.
They literally shouldn't be filling their roster. Because if anyone gets kicked from SK, I'm taking them into Immortals. Anyone. Like, you'd think they wouldn't fucking love to have Phelps back. Or what if Fur seems discontented in the team? Well, if fucking Fur leaves, I'm building the whole team around him, you know?
Well, that was one of the rumors. Like, obviously, I know a few Brazilian journalists and a few, like, Brazilian scene, people, scene writers, people with contacts and stuff. And people have been trying to spin me all sorts of bullshit. Like they think I'll swallow anything. Me, like, I'm fuck that. It ain't prison, son. You know what I mean? I'm fucking getting told some absolute straight bullshit. I got
just
told
lying. Just straight lying, isn't it?
Yeah. We must be.
Hey, Richard, can I tell you this in private? Definitely don't put this out there, but my friend's team is going to sign Fur.
Yeah, so like one of the things I got told was that Immortals might be swooping in and spending big to get the SK roster, or the bulk of it, right? And I was like, it don't make sense. There's no way. Like what does SK Gaming have if they let that go?
What sort of mad House of Cards finale episode would you have to pull to get that? I mean, first of all, you'd have to form some sort of airstrike in fucking Uzbekistan right before you pull the trigger on the deal.
Yeah.
Like how are you going to get those players? Those players are very firmly locked up, as a different daft little cunt with a ginger beard will attest, because he failed to free them.
Yeah.
I believe his name is, what was his name? I am lying and more reasons. Not bad.
Yeah,
I did my best.
You did all right, mate. But so that was getting bandied around. Like, Rich, you want to bloody dig into this? I'm like, no, I don't, mate. Because if SK Gaming allowed that to happen, what are SK Gaming? They took the ES Force money to power play to get that Brazilian team. You then don't let like fucking Hall of Famer Counter-Strike players like fucking Cold Zero and Fallen go to Immortals with their VC money. It's madness. SK Gaming drops off the cliff at that point. So
that was a sick move, by the way. I have to say that was a straight gangster move. Like how they pulled all that together. Yeah. Genius.
Yeah, and managed to keep it pretty, relatively secret up until the deal was kind of on the rocks and people were threatening all sorts of legal bullshit and whatnot. But then the other nonsensical story that got set to me by another source who's dipped in and out before, like, you're never going to guess what. This is the one. Finally, evil geniuses are coming back and they're going to buy bloody SK Gaming. That was the other one that got.
Okay, I've got something for you on that.
Go on then.
I had heard separately that Evil Geniuses was going to sign an NA roster in the last couple of months and that it didn't go through for particular reasons. So apparently they are around.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard EG are sort of like, they're still looking. The wild thing about the Evil Geniuses brand is the longer you leave it to come back to Counter-Strike, the less allure your brand even has, right? Like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it decisively. Because let's say you leave it another year, and we get into 2018, and you come out, hey, Evil Genius is back, 70% of the fan base ain't going to give a fuck. They don't know who you are, you know? It's only going to be old timers like me and Duncan who are going, yeah, do you remember Bloody Evil? Do you know what I mean? Like, the average fan, that's what I'm saying. Like, every day you leave it, you're fucking up your own brand, your own history, you know? Like, they should definitely have been back in Counter-Strike before now. I understand there were problems with the Twitch and the Alliance thing and some of the other fucking
didn't help all those players getting banned.
Yeah.
That didn't help.
Yeah. That they were gonna obviously have a team, quite famously, that may or may not have thrown a match.
They definitely threw the match, so I don't know why you're making that part vague. I think we can conclusively say they threw the match, Rich.
I just want it to go away, don't
okay.
I just want it to all go away. Keep watching Swag wrecking heads, and it just makes me sad inside, you know.
Hey y'all, why can't I play that Counter-Strike, y'all?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's true. I would say that's as equally as absurd as Immortals buying them. But again, this is what I mean when I say there's been a cloud around SK. Something's going on. I'll say that much. When you've got players putting out like vague tweets about, you know, fuck this shit and whatnot, and they weren't as communicative or as cohesive a unit as they usually are at tournaments at ELeague, you know, very reminiscent of when they've had, you know, transfers in the past or team switch ups in the past. So,
well, here's the thing, and as well, here's another aspect to add that I think is interesting. Is first of all, when you look at the Liquid rise, I realize he was there a long time, but I do give some of the credit to Zeus as well. Like, I think Zeus did a good job in Team Liquid. And obviously, what a steal it was that an American team could get that guy, because obviously we have two big Brazilian sides who have money in their orgs. So the idea that he not only left SK, but didn't just go to Immortals, obviously he did initially as a player, but didn't stay with them, went to an NA org. You're never normally going to be able to get a player like that. Well, I actually do think that's been a factor in this SK team, because remember, it was just after, it was like 3 or 4 months after Zeus left that the FNX situation left. And one of the things people said within the team he was very good at was, like, he knew people like FNX from years back in the scene, and he was like an authority figure who could kind of keep them on track. And if Cold Zero was obviously the superstar player, was getting out of control, he could kind of, you know, keep him. It's not just Fallen doing it, because the big problem if you're Fallen in that scenario with trying to talk to a player or discipline a player is you're directly competing with him. So he can go, well, look how you played, or you did this mistake, you know, and that is where it always falls down if you're the in-game leader trying to sort of chastise someone. So if you can have an outside party do it, it's ideal. Then he can work on this guy and I'll work on this guy. Because I have to say, I wonder when I look at all these problems in SK, where's Fallen in all this? Like, I don't say that to blame him, but he does seem like he's a little bit of a hands-off in-game leader in that sense. Like, it feels like he just lets people like Furge work it out. Like, they're just going to do, like, yeah, maybe someone like Fops, who's a younger player, he brings in and kind of has to some degree change. He might work with someone like that, but it feels like some of the other guys, now that there's no Zeus, he just kind of lets them do their shit and just hopes they come around.
So we'll see what's happening with SK Gaming. Another team that's got fucking seeming chronic problems is Na'Vi. Haven't necessarily been in the news.
Not the fantastic Dr. Dre type.
No. I got up early and I watched the IEM Oakland qualifiers. I wanted to see how that was going down. Saw some fucking mad early morning commentary, by the way, watching all these qualifiers, because obviously they don't bring out the A team, you know. I sent Sam a clip. It's one of some of the most absurd commentary I've ever heard.
What match is it from?
Oh fuck! Hang on then. Right, I'll yeah. You grab it for me now.
Is this ESL? An ESL caster?
No, it was Tea Time. I don't know if you know Tea Time.
Okay, I've heard of him.
Right. Okay. So it was when LDLC beat. Yeah. Well, I knew it would be. It was in the Na'Vi game.
Bruh.
So yeah, right.
Okay, yeah.
So I was watching that one, just thinking about how conflicted you must be, because you've got Existence basically sticking it to fucking Simple. So it's
no.
like,
here's the one that kills me, mate. Fucking. Yeah. In that game, Maniac was like out fragging like fucking 4/5 of Na'Vi or something mental.
Yeah. No, it was mental.
Check your motherfucking self before you wreck yourself, Na'Vi.
Yeah, this is what I mean though. I wasn't going to talk about LDLC on this podcast, but I mean, I gotta say, it's baffling that this team's anywhere like near relevant, if you like, because
in Pro League they're like 6th or something.
Yeah, I know.
They've won a lot of games.
The firepower is devil.
Garbage.
It's devil, Duncan.
Yeah,
it's devil and fucking Alex. Help me, Jesus! How are these? Like, I was thinking, watch a nice bloody easy Na'Vi game in bed, sipping a cup of. I just watched Na'Vi get fucking bodied, mate. It was depressing as fuck. Anyway, before we talk about that and simple and why Na'Vi's bad, this commentary was some of the most outrageous commentary I've ever heard. Like, Sam's laughing from it.
I'm having a look now.
Pause it at the start. We'll all 3, 2, 1 it.
Yeah, we got a 3, 2, 1 this.
Right, I paused it.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Towards that A site, but that A site is populated with the French. It's colonized at this point. It's like South African territories back in the 1920s, and Toinu, he's doing exactly what the Frenchmen did back then, which is massacre all the natives.
That wasn't even South Africa.
Oh, simple goes down. It's a no-scope, and Toinu, he's not just doubling his kill score, he's tripling it as he manages to find 4 more kills.
Right, first things first. First of all, I believe it was the Dutch who colonized South Africa. Secondly, can we go ahead and say it was definitely not France? And thirdly, what is this massacre you speak of? Fourthly, why is that a reference point?
Right, listen, right?
Why not use fictional stuff? Just say, like, in bloody Mordor in Lord of the Rings, because there's no fucking orcs who come online like, our family were in Mordor, you laugh cunt. Like, why is he doing that? It's the way he just kept the analogy going as well.
Yeah.
They've colonized them. They're forcing the inferior races to work for them, and off the toil of their sweat, each man does not receive equally.
Yeah, I know. It was unreal.
They're killing the trip. Look, they've killed the guy trying to flank, like the ringleaders of the resistance, who must be destroyed and stabbed. Fuck you, hell. Where's this going?
No, it was so unreal. Because again, like, keep in mind
as well.
I don't even know when this game was. It was like 6 or 7 a.m. for me. So I was like watching it, like, and I was like, sorry, like, it was so mental, didn't I? And just like they did in the 1920s, they've killed all the natives. Like, listen, phrases not to use in Counter-Strike commentary. They've killed all the natives. Don't ever say that.
Well, don't
ever say that.
Anytime again, just a little pro tip to any casters out there. If you're ever going to say something like, they're massacring them, just like, it must be a fictional reference point you insert there. Even if, like, well, then again, I'll give you, here's the thing, maybe go with like Genghis Khan or something. Like, that's in far enough away. Don't reference anything from the last 2 centuries.
Thing is, I was so taken aback because I've watched Tea Time cast quite a little bit. I think he's good at what he does. I think he's like, when it's solidly in that tier 2.
Obviously,
probably
don't ever let him cast like big versus pro. And the bloody Germans are taking over the poor fucking.
I know, yeah. Get me out.
Cut.
I literally couldn't believe it. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was expecting the broadcast to just get turned off. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, just like the fucking clown. Yeah.
No.
Like, just the clown on the chalkboard, except it's like Carmack's face or something, Like, it was just fucking so wild. So I had to bring that up, mate, because that just blew my mind. Anyway, what blew my mind even more was Na'Vi getting wrecked in a best of 3 against that LDLC team. And obviously, immediately afterwards, Simple tweeted out, "I'm done," on Twitter. And a few pros replied to him saying, let's play some bloody FPL together or whatever, trying to chill him out. Now, what's interesting is you probably don't know this if you've gone to the CSGO subreddit, because the mods inexplicably deleted that thread on the grounds that it wasn't relevant. They said a pro player playing for a pro team after a loss saying, "I'm done," hinting at possible problems in the team, possible retirement, or possibly leaving the team, isn't relevant to the subreddit's interests. They deleted it about 4 times.
I'll just open up the subreddit now. Let's have a look. Top thing on the subreddit is a meme that is the free-for-all deathmatch scumbag starter pack. It's hilarious. It's a bunch of guns, silly guns. Imagine if you bought these silly guns and played in the game. What the fuck's that relevance then?
Yeah, well, no, but like, do you get it? That we all play deathmatch. Anyway. So
mentally ill, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just so fucked up. So anyway, Simple.
Mate, there's even a thread here. Thread to find your local CS:GO nerds, right? How would that be relevant? We're not local. We all live around the world. Also, this is just going to lead to some nerd getting fucked. Think about it. It's going to get dark, isn't it? Someone's going to be like, do you play free for all? Yeah, I do. What weapon do you like? I like the auto sniper. Want to suck my cock? Yeah. Not getting any more. Not getting any better offers, am I? So,
Timestamp.
So anyway, right? So they get wrecked, and like, here's the thing, mate. That series is so like statistically simple. Right, this is now Kenny S in Titan.
This Titan could run tactics and stuff, though, win some match. They used to get the lands, Rich, and go to the playoffs. You know, they didn't win the land, sure, but they had some at least.
Nah, I mean,
it's ludicrous.
Yeah, like it is beyond a joke. Like, I'm gonna bring up the statistics. Actually, hang on, I'll get them because Na'Vi finishing 5th to 8th here, losing to LDLC 2-1. Like, even when they gave up a map, I was like, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. And then it just wasn't all fucking right at all. So hang on, let me get the stats. Right, here we are. So Simple was plus 25 with 82 kills in a best of 3. The next highest was the UK player Alex with 75, which is insane. But on his team, the next highest fragger was Edward, -4 overall with 56 kills. So think about the disparity there. No one had, one player, and it was Zeus, had an ADR over 70. It was Simple, meanwhile, 90 ADR, 82 kills. He can't fucking... This is no way for a star player to live. There's got to... And here's the thing, I remember when Zeus came back from fucking Gambit. I must have been, huffing some fucking ether rag or something, because I believed it for a bit. I believed it for 2 weeks. I thought, yeah, Zeus is going to fix everything. Seized will come back because he's not in-game leading anymore. Seized is just shit now. That's just the reality we've all got to wake up to. He's just shit now. He's just shit now. I don't know why. He used to be like one of the stealth stars on that team. Seized is just shit now. Flamey hasn't done anything spectacular probably all fucking year. Edward is past his fucking prime. Let's be real. If Edward was a fucking car, you'd be trading it in round about now. Easily. You wouldn't get anything for it. You get a fucking push bike.
Depends if you're a tier 3 Brazilian team. They'd be like $10 million, and no lower offers.
It's madness. It's like this. And Zeus every day. Here's the thing: Zeus ain't fixing this team, because Zeus is going to wake up every day, especially now that he's got to run his own Twitter account, because that retard that used to run Zeus's Twitter had to stand down after continually impersonating Zeus on the Twitter account. Zeus is going to wake up with the realization he could have been in Gambit. He could have been competitive. He could have stayed with the major winners. There was no need. I hope Na'Vi paid him a small fucking fortune, because literally I don't think he truly understood what he was getting back into. And I've been a Na'Vi fanboy for years. I mean, seriously, I still say Na'Vi is the best team in CSGO to never have had an era. They were so close. You think about how they were in the ascendancy around about Cluj and Poker time. They should have gone on a fucking tear and dominated the scene. It just never happened, despite having this fabulous roster. They were always runners-up, like Ohio, same shit, Guardian's Arm. You're like, right, well, it's Guardian's Arm won't be broken forever. Nah, he's just going to get married instead and then fuck off to FaZe. You know what I mean? Like, by his own admission, not even practice. Like, Na'Vi had the window to be one of the great teams in CSGO history, and it's fucking been kicked in, and boarded up. It's fucked. They're done now. And it needs wholesale changes. And yet, the guy who runs them's like, 6 figures for bloody Electronic. I don't know. You're going to lose way more. This is a side that can't qualify for IEM Auckland, Duncan.
Yeah. No,
it's ridiculous.
As I referenced earlier, what's mad is they're at Virtus Pro status. They're getting invites to tournaments. First of all, some of those tournaments, conflict of interest, their own fucking owners inviting them to their tournaments. Fair enough. Okay. If I was allowed to run my own tournament and have my own teams, I think I would definitely invite them. So I guess I can't blame them since it's legal, but that's ridiculous. And yeah, the other events they get invited to because of fans. Like, for example, obviously they're going to be invited to Star Ladders and these sorts of tournaments and even IEMs, etc., because they bring a certain level of the CIS fan base. So that's one of those areas where people have always like portrayed me in a straw man in regard in that sense. I'm definitely not someone who thinks that every big name team should be invited to events. I've never thought that whatsoever. I want the best teams to be invited. What pisses me off is when, as I said, G2 might be like top 3 in the world, but they're having to qualify through online qualifiers. No, that team should be invited. What I don't like, though, is exactly like this, where you do only invite Virtus.pro because you know they've got loads of Polish fans. At that point, it's like, listen, I know we've all got to make a living, but you have to almost have some self-respect for your tournament at that point in time, and say they have to make it the hard way.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the territory we're moving into, isn't it? And this is why I've been talking about it so much and nobody listens. If tournament organizers start buying up more and more, or the parent companies behind those tournaments start buying up more and more teams, it's just going to get to a point where it's like the ES Force tournament invites the ES Force teams plus a couple of others. Refresh invites all of the Refresh teams plus a couple of others. And the horror that is an online qualifier. Like you see all these freak results all the time in online qualifiers. Absolute dog shit teams you've never heard of winning a best of one against some tier 1 team, People say, it could be cheats. People say it could be just ridiculous play style.
Just think of all the other factors as well. Like if you want to break that down, where's the server located? From my experience with those online qualifiers, you have a very short amount of time to fix logistical issues. If someone's lagging, if someone's anti-cheat doesn't work, if the server location's just fucked for the routing for one guy. Most times, even if you're a massive team, they just say you have to play now. And so you have to just accept whatever the result is. So if you look at the overall general rule, except maybe like 2014, 2015, when there was still so few top teams that people had like really good players and proper rhythm and routine and all that stuff, except for that era, you can reliably expect top teams not to make it through the online qualifier. If there are 2 spots left and G2 and North are in there, give me the fucking odds on like Hellraisers, Envious, and I mean, I guess I wouldn't pick Space Soldier to make the land, but they'll definitely beat some of them cunts. Like those teams tear up those online qualifiers, while teams that are literally 5 times better on land don't make it.
Yeah, it's insane. And Na'Vi, by the way, to come back to that, like when Simple tweeted out, "I'm done." Like, let's be real here. The only reason Simple is in Na'Vi is because, well, let's take him at his word and say that he does feel that that's the organization he wants to play for because, he's got this, he looks up to them. It's the brand, like, in his locale, in his region, that he most wants to play for. Let's take him at his word there. But also, of course, as well, that he is so close to his family and girlfriend. And Team Liquid did kind of bungle it a little bit and handle his relationship out there very poorly. That's well documented, that he felt like he couldn't go to America. Now, let's say, for example, I don't know, let's say a team like Optic, who was struggling to bed HS in at the moment, took a bit of a gamble on Penta, or just any NA team with money to spend, right? Let's say they say, Simple, we'll come in, we'll buy you, we'll bring your missus out, we'll get you a house. If I'm him, I'm thinking right now, like, how the fuck do I get out? It doesn't matter if I got to spend 6 months a year in America and miss my family. I think he's there for the taking. When he says I'm done, I think he's genuinely sick. And why wouldn't you be? Do you know what I mean? It's not just that he's carrying games. We all know how Na'Vi works. He's putting up with the barking, Zeus shouting at everyone, telling everyone what to fucking do. The misery, Flamey all silent, shutting down because he's being told he's not playing well enough. Sees never reacts to anything. Like, and he's just there, this star player, trying to put a team on his back again and again and again. Like, you can't keep doing that. Like, do you remember how miserable Kenny S was when he was locked in that,
Yeah.
So I think he's there for the taking. I think an organization could swoop in now, pay big money, Na'Vi need to completely rebuild anyway.
Well, that's the sick part, isn't it? Like, for anyone, by the way, as always, people who hit, as you will well know, Richard, people on the internet who hate other people, right, are automatically mentally ill, because generally that person's never interacted with them, never done anything to them. The idea you hate that person, don't just dislike them, you hate them, means that that's sort of a feeling, that's something coming from you, and you then reverse engineer reasons why you hate them. And you try to make it sound to other people like it's not ridiculous that you hate them. So what they always do is spin anything with Simple into his fault, right? So the fact that he's carrying now will be that he's so selfish as a player, and that he's the one somehow ruining everyone else's game, and therefore making himself amazing. All I'll tell you is this. Imagine that Simple did leave that team. That team's never going to do anything ever again. That team without Simple would be so fucking bad. They'd get relegated from Pro League. They wouldn't qualify for any lands. They would be down at the minor next time. They would be done as a team, because that core is non-existent without Simple.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I like I say, for me, if I was Simple, I'd do myself a fucking favor. I'd do myself the favor. He can go to any team in the world. Yes, his English isn't great, but it's not fucking bad. He's proved he can play in a team with all native English speakers. He took Team Liquid to a fucking major final, for fuck's sake. He can do this shit. He can be one of the highest paid players in the world. He can go anywhere he wants in the world. The only person limiting him is himself, because he's got this very strong attachment to his family. Sometimes pro athletes just have to suck that up, by the way. I mean, shit, I'm from a generation of families who went away in the military, went and worked on the oil rigs for 6 months at a time. You know, you find a way to work through it, right? But not just that, this misplaced adoration for the Na'Vi brand. Let's be clear, Na'Vi as a brand just milks old talent for as long as it can, and always has, and makes as much money as they can off their stars. You know, Dendy still trucking away in Dota 2. They did it with the 1.6 team long after they were, you know, weren't competitive, and they're doing it here. You know, Edwards definitely, for me, gotta go. I know he maybe didn't have a terrible series there, but I just don't even understand what he does. He's just an ordinary generic player, you know. He's like NBA 2K18 when you don't level him up. He's just 60s across the board, you know. Like, he's there. He won't fuck everything up. That's his role, you know. That's you got to aim higher than that if you want to be a championship winning team. And Simple, as I said, he if he is done, fucking hell, pick up the phone. I'll connect you with the world is your fucking oyster. You're one of the best players in the world. You can go anywhere. You don't need to go down with this fucking Titanic at all. You're one of the motherfuckers that gets the lifeboat and a fucking rubber ring. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So anyway, we'll move on from Na'Vi because, yeah, they're kind of fucking donezo. There was a couple of other bits of news that I wanted to hit real quick. Oh, actually, while we're still on the IEM qualifier, Optic qualified for Oakland as well. Overcame Renegades in the final. I watched that game too last night. And I got kind of, not ambushed, but I got asked a question by a group of people called Double Tap. It came out a little bit left field because obviously Optic aren't at ELeague, so I wasn't expecting it. And they said, oh, what do you make of Optic? And I kind of said, yeah, you know, I think if they need to make an adjustment, it should probably be HS. Now, I isn't saying they should kick him now. It's just if you want to win instantly now, that would be, you know, that would be the change I would make. And I saw it. There was a thread over on the Optic subreddit and everything. So I just wanted to clarify that. But Optic have done particularly well. Let's be clear here. Sure, you might look at it and say, oh, they beat Renegades in a best of 3. Renegades are the favourites in that game for me. Optic have been together, you know, X amount of time. They're bringing people from all over the world. New in-game leader who's never been an in-game leader in his career before. Like, there's so many reasons why Renegades, with its stable core, sure, new in-game leader and a new star signing. Nafai went off big, by the way. You know, for me, Renegades were the favourite for that. I think that's a very good result, beating them in a best of 3 and getting through to Oakland. I don't know what you make of it and their progress so far.
I mean, obviously, they've only played online games so far, so I haven't watched them play much. And, like, I just don't buy that Optic lineup's going to be really good. Like, I think the lineup, here's the thing. Within the context of how they got signed, like, Hex was in a scenario where there's no longer any NA talents available. So now he has to make an even worse version of an NA team, probably get like NRG players or maybe bring fucking Hiko back or something, He was in a bad spot. So he has pulled a miracle out to get these players where they have name value, they're fan favourites, people want to watch them play. And I do think at least a couple of them have got to turn their careers around because there are a bunch of talented players where some of them were just in bad spots. So I certainly think it was worth his while and it will be one of the better NA region teams, but I don't buy the idea it's going to be really good. And I do think that HS, like I said, I think he was just bottom of the shopping list and the other items weren't available, and so they went with him because they had to get someone. And this should be an in-game leader, and I'm definitely not sold on the idea Freiburg's going to be a great in-game leader himself, so I think it's a very flawed lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think, though, they're one player away. Like, I think if you add, like, a genuine start of that lineup, like, here's the thing. There's going to be a mad move to NA soon. Like, one of these players who, like I say, are going down with, like, sinking ships right now, who are young, got the future ahead of them, speak well enough English to go. It could be a Simple. It could be a Snacks. You know what I mean? There's players there who I think could fucking jump across. And I know Optic have got the money and the resources. Like, if you slotted one of those guys into that team, I think, it's a massive game changer. No one's going to challenge FaZe right now. That's fucking done. They're like 16-2 on online maps or just maps in general or something was the stat today that everyone was talking about on Reddit. They're going to be the number one team for the next 3 to 6 months. Untouchable. I think they'll win every tournament they go to unless there's some Herculean effort in like a semi-final best of 3, That's where they're at right now for me in my mind. But I could definitely see a star player like completing that Optic lineup and pushing them over the top and actually making them decent. So I'm going to watch that space. Here's a talking point for you, Duncan. Bondic. Remember him? Bondic doesn't. He's joined Tyloo on loan. And I talked about this before on this podcast. What's going on in China right now, other than rampant match fixing, of course, is that there's lots of very ordinary European players kind of being offered money to go compete in this Chinese Super League, like crazy contracts. And I think Bondic might be the start of a trend we're going to see. You remember how you saw in League of Legends, the sort of old school Koreans went out of China to get a slice of that, Chinese money? I think we're going to start seeing that in Counter-Strike, because I've had a number of they're tier 3 European players in some cases, like coming up to me going, hey, I got this contract from a Chinese organization. Will you take a look at it and stuff? And I'm like, what, would you really want to move to fucking China? And they're like, hell yeah, look at the fucking salary. So it's like, it's pretty, it's pretty crazy. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Bondic, whether it'll be a permanent move, but I was really fucking surprised, and it's like, I think China might become sort of the retirement home. They've already got Peacemaker over there. And
here's the thing, though. No one else has made this point, right? But this is the part that's very suspicious about this move. So no amount of money can sign Angel from Hellraisers. You just can't get him into Na'Vi. It can't happen.
Yeah.
Na'Vi needs a player. They're a side that's from CIS region. Bondic is a very serviceable player. It's been pretty solid. He's even played in teams with some of them in the past. Why can't he just go to Na'Vi? But he can go to some fucking Chinese team and play there, can he? Like, what's going on exactly where we can live in the same world where both things exist?
All right, okay. Well, we'll go back to Rumor Town, shall we? Do you wanna come back? Yeah.
Population, some shit would be hacker.
Possibly.
Actually, if that was the case, I'd just firebomb the village, wouldn't I?
So Rumor Town, right? I wonder if there is something more to it at play why Bondic. I have not heard anything about Na'Vi trying to tap up Bondic, but let's be clear. There's meant to be some financial ties between Starladder and Hellraisers, right? And obviously Epicenter.
Imagine that.
Imagine that, right? So Epicenter and ES Force. You know what I mean? So you can see immediately why one company, if that was true. All right. One company wouldn't necessarily want to facilitate the success of the other. And I know we hear all this nonsense about ES Force just owning the media rights for Na'Vi. Yeah, sure.
Anyone who says that, when they say all they own is the media rights, is like bragging. I don't know anything about business. I don't know anything. It's like that's a translation of what that means. Think about it this way, okay? I've often said this, okay? This is how you should think about modern day esports orgs who aren't yet part of like a franchised league like the Overwatch League or NALCS. A modern day esports organization is not like a sports team. It's like an agency where they're your agent and they get sponsors and they take a cut and you get some of the sponsor money representing you. Now, in that world, what does the agent sell? Your likeness rights. So your likeness rights is the only part of the business that can generate any money. So all you're telling me is they only own the part of Na'Vi that can make money. So there's no conflict of interest there, is there? Get back on your paper round before I smack your ass. Don't cut that part. It's too hilarious.
No. We'll leave that.
That's reasonable.
Yes, arse smacking, completely fine. But look, no, you're right, you know, and I've said this a bunch of times, like, any financial influence is enough, right? But they're calling it media rights, and they know what they're doing when they call it media rights. Na'Vi are registered in fucking Hong Kong, for fuck's sake. Local lads, are they? You know what I mean? Like, you got to see what's going on here, and people don't. So, yeah, I mean, you know, you're right. I don't know why Bondic couldn't go there, but I imagine it could be about, you know, some sort of bigger picture, you know, like one company not wanting to do business with the other. Let's not forget that over the major stuff, you know, for Dota, there was some sort of not like there's all sorts of power plays in that region, all sorts of Game of Thrones bullshit going on. Like everybody wants to control it. But back to the talking point, do you think we'll see this European exodus going out to China? Because the Super League's coming, you know?
I think, to me, the only factor that will accelerate it or make it like happen more, because it's clearly going to happen, is how much money the Chinese teams are willing to spend. Like, that's why the launch of CSGO in China, if it can take off, is also a big deal. Because people are naive, right? They think to themselves, right, well, it only matters if it means more Chinese people play, Chinese teams get better. No. What it matters is, as I said before, there is already a giant infrastructure for esports in China. It just has no connection to CSGO, because why would you invest in it when it's not a big game? If it becomes a big game and they invest all that money, then what will happen is, I'll give you an example right now. So someone who could be on a number of tier 2 teams in Europe is Pimp, the former Team Liquid player. But at the moment, he doesn't play for a top team. He's sort of in the middle where he's testing out streaming. He's doing some events, right? If someone came to him and said, listen, we haven't got an amazing team right now, but you'll get invite slots to all the Star Ladder events because they have ELeague that they work with. And we've got, slots for there. And you'll get to maybe qualify for majors through the Asian minor, etc. And we'll pay you 10 grand a month salary. I think something like that, I'd give it a go for 6 months, a year, whatever it might be. So people like that, who, by the way, we'd all like to watch them play. It'd make it interesting, right? Suddenly you'd watch Vici game and play if they had fucking Pimp and another player, who was half decent. Yeah, you'd start watching some of these games, wouldn't you?
So the final couple of stories. I saw Devil Walk was back with another team.
What team's this?
It's called Passions.
This is where I half expect you to be like, oh, yeah, unfortunately, Immortals couldn't buy Devil Walk. Buy out 700k.
No, I mean, I'm this fucking Devil Walk, man. Devil Walk. I like Jonathan.
He's all right.
He's a top guy. Like, for me, he's the... You know how you get these players that, like, they achieve sort of greatness at the start of a scene, and that should be enough to sustain them throughout the next few years. But you always get one or two that just fall off the cliff, and you don't see them again. And then they try and come back in, and like shit's just moved on too much. You can never really get back. Well, yeah, I kind of feel that happened to Jonathan. I think it's a fucking goddamn shame. Obviously, he did win that fucking major. You can't take that away from him. He's done something that even players like your beloved Existence will never do.
It's not over yet.
it fucking
listen,
is,
maybe LDLC will play Na'Vi in the final of the next major. Maniac will be MVP. He'll drop 50. Simple will have like 400 kills in the series, and at the end of it say, my life is literally going to end, and then CSGO mods will say it's not relevant. Just remove that.
It's not relevant. Yeah,
nothing to do with say yes.
No. But I think for me, Jonathan coming back and playing, I don't know if it's like just a sort of bit of fun or whatever for him, but he said he was looking for an organization. But he's got a team. I don't know any of the other players he's playing with at all. Although, actually, no, I've heard of Hampus. Hampus is in there. Good old Hampus. All the household names. But yeah, I don't know, dude. I want to see him like coach or something now. I don't want to see him get, have to go back out into the fucking jungle and get beat up. It's time, like, hang up the fucking mouse,
You remember that song, Rich? Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me. I think it's Don't You, parentheses, Forget About Me. But you remember that classic song from the 80s?
I do.
Used in many movies.
Yeah.
Right, that's a great song, Rich. It's got a lot of memories for me. Sometimes if I want, I might go back and listen to it. Don't want to hear any new material by Simple Minds. Don't care. If anyone says to me, what's this? I go, what you putting on there? New Simple Minds album, get it off. So, in short, that's Devil Walk.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I'm sure he'll love that when he watches this show. But yeah, like I don't know. I hope it works out for him. I just don't think it's gonna. But I thought I'd mention it anyway. They are looking for an organization. So if you're one of the many industry people who watch this podcast and you're looking to pick up some Swedes,
I'd recommend don't sign him. I think I'd be irresponsible if I let Richard tell you to sign him. So don't do it.
I say do, just to spite Duncan. So look, we're gonna move on to viewer questions. Just before we do that, there was one other thing I wanted to fucking just see with you. I want to see your reaction to this on Reddit, of course, everyone's favorite website. We all love it. We all have to live with its fucking tyranny. There was this clip, right? Because everyone talks about Tarek and his fucking.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah.
Did you watch it? Did you?
Yeah, it's classic.
Right. Yeah.
I hope you already know where I'm going with this because I already know exactly what happened with that.
Okay. Well, let's see. So anyway, we'll 3, 2, 1 it. This is basically Tarek forgetting what team he's on. Like it's like one of the strangest things I've ever seen from a player. So yeah, he sees Optic listed. Obviously, he's on Cloud9 now, and he was like.
Sitting in a Cloud9 chair, of course.
Like, all you have to do is just look around and realise. But yeah, so...
Why is everything blue?
So I was like, fucking hell. He's... maybe there's something in that peanut brain stuff, Duncan.
Come on. It's nothing to do with intelligence, right? Do you see the delayed reaction? And the way all he did is go, shit, dude, that's fucking crazy. He's high. There's no one else who's going to call it. There's no one else who's going to say what we all know. He's just high, isn't he? I've been high before. I thought to myself, fucking hell, I haven't even gone to that class in a while. Oh, wait, I'm not even at school. I'm shit. School ended years ago. What am I talking about? You just get lost in a thought, don't you? You go off. We've all been there. Let's not pretend like he actually legitimately in his life forgot where he was. All he forgot was, is he sober or not? And if you ever have to ask that question, you're not. As Henny told me before he went and played the major final.
Oh, mate. But yeah, so I couldn't believe that, man. But yeah, he probably was pretty baked. Medicinal, I'm sure.
Was funny, though. Listen, it was straight fire.
Yeah, it was. I was
just see the devil.
Oh, listen, I'm sure he needs it for some sort of medical condition.
Yeah.
Like being a boring cunt. not enjoying Rick and Morty on an intellectual enough level. Yeah, so you have to stimulate his pineal gland.
Wubba lubba dub jub. Right, anyway.
Exactly.
Let's do the sorry, mate.
Mate, that's what a sad
quote. I don't give a fuck.
That's what an absolutely sad life Tarek has. If Tarek took DMT, he'd go like through the chrysanthemum, it'd open up, he'd enter into the domed area, he'd meet a self-dribbling, jeweled basketball machine elf tyke, and he'd go, fucking hell, what time do we play the American Minor? And then the tyke would go, I'm not on Optic. I'm a 17th dimensional tesseract object, and it'd go, sorry, I thought you were hazed. My bad.
Oh God, this bit, man. Right, anyway, fuck it. That's
probably how they used to get Tarek. When Optic used to have matches, right, where Tarek hadn't come online yet, Hayes would go, I'll just go get it from the spirit realm into the astral dimension. I go, Tarek, you needed for a game. Buddy, oh yeah, I'm a human. I thought I was some sort of an animal or something, right? Well, down I go.
Right, let's do some fucking questions. So this is from Dean Tanglis, one of our $100 patrons. With Simple in great form, we didn't actually answer this question. With Simple in all-time great form, what needs to change in Na'Vi for these performances to turn into wins? I mean, I made my views quite clear. You have to cut at least 2 of the existing players. Let's assume you can keep Zeus. Let's assume Simple wants to stay. Let's assume Flamey's the one who can pull his finger out his arse and fucking do something. For me, at this stage, Edward and C's probably is the make weights. You bring in Electronic. Maybe you can get another wild-ass motherfucker from Gambit or something. Or just find one of these other like CIS god-tier players. And maybe you can rebuild Na'Vi that way.
Oh, at this point in time, it's a team where it's not even one player. You probably need to cut half the team. Like, you need to radically overhaul. And I agree, by the way, if you really can't get these players, like, fair play if you just can't get Angel and Electronic and somehow like they're so unreasonable with the buyout demands, then you have, at this point in time, it's reached the point where you should start gambling. You should actually be going ahead and getting players like wherever the fuck people like Fitch came from, who haven't had their big shot at the big time yet, but you think they've got some talent, or someone, you know, played with them and said, give this guy a try, you know. It's worth a try compared to what you're doing now. It is the definition of madness. You're just running the same players over and over again. Like, what is C's going to do at this point in time? Change how he's been playing for over 1 year? It's not going to happen. So just let him go elsewhere. And here's another thing, okay? Like, I actually do think the CIS scene's always had loads of talent. So I would go personally with just some unproven people and give them a shot. But maybe there's also a world in which you have to consider some non-CIS players.
Yeah.
It's another option, right?
I mean, I don't know, though, because there's never been any indication from the others that they could sort of be bilingual. I've never seen them in game.
Like, they'd just be cunts. They'd be like when Guardian joined and he was like, yeah, but how well will we speak English? Russian only. It's like, yeah, but we all speak Russian. It's like, I guess I'll just start learning it, inshallah. Yes. Da.
Da. Yeah. All right, so we got another question here. This is from Big Hungry, another one of our $100 patrons. Basically, he asks what could be changed about the major spot system to stop situations like Immortals. Do you give more percentage to the organization? Question mark. So yeah, for me, there's no easy answers here. If you go down the route of giving more power to the organization, there's a potential players will get fucked. If you go down the route of giving more power to players, you end up where players, and look, let's be real. This isn't the first time it's happened. People obviously forget about that situation with Godsent. Obviously, that's ancient history, right? To the average CS fan, where literally Crims had all the power in the fucking world, didn't he? Because if he went and played for Godsent, they were in a major. If he stayed with Fnatic, they were in a major. So imagine being that player in that situation. I'd just be like, right, well, whoever fucking makes it rain on my face right now with fucking $100 bills is the cunt that I'm going to go and play for, because that's your payday. That's your leverage. So we've had absurd situations like this in the past. What, were you thinking of something else there, or are you just back to the DMT bit?
No, just when you're like, whoever makes it rain on my face, Rain's like, fucking hell, drops his trousers. I'm not going to have to bloody
$100 bill.
Not going to have to bloody sit on another guy's face to get him in the team. I'm like, well, there we go. You got to do what you're going to do in face. Face up.
So anyway, obviously Crims had all the fucking cards to play, didn't he? And we have a situation here where it's like Henny and Lucas and KNG are all fucking. You got to giggle about that season all night.
Just listening. Yeah.
So they're obviously the ones that hold the cards this time around. So I don't know if there is an answer, but for me, like, I understand the logic of players being the sort of like gatekeepers, if you like, to the major slots, because they're the people who earned that privilege and you know, should get to defend their title. But that is not analogous to any other sport in the world. Sure. That isn't analogous to anything else we do in any mainstream sport. You know, the team that qualifies for the Champions League, for example, in soccer, they don't fucking... If 5 of those players leave... Sorry, it would need to be 6, wouldn't it? 6 of those players leave. They don't take that qualifying spot with them. You know, even if all 6 go to the same team, nobody comes in and goes, yeah, well, hang on a minute, lads. They've got a given right to be in their defender. So it is quite a unique take on who deserves to be at a tournament. Meanwhile, if you look at the merchandising and marketing around what goes on for a major, it's the logo of the organization that gets sold. It's the signatures of the players with the organizations taking a cut. A major is a payday for an organization. And if the organization have invested heavily in the players, this is how they recoup some of that expense. So if you look at it from a business perspective, you can make an equally compelling argument, in my mind, why should an organization that did nothing wrong by its players get fucked over if players decide to leave? So it's a tough one for me. I don't know if there is an answer, honestly.
I mean, I think the obvious solution, personally, is get rid of all major spots for everyone. No org has it, no players have it.
How the fuck does that work?
You qualify for every major. I mean, if you were anyone who wasn't a daft cunt would realize you could literally just invite the top 8 based on all the last 5 lands or whatever, couldn't you? That's not even going to be debatable. Like, it's very rare in the top 8 that you're going to have some wild one where it's like, how did that game get in there? We could all have a consensus on at least like the top 6, 7, 8, you know. So you could already do that. Secondly, this is like an example of where I am really sick of game developers being actively hostile to the people who built esports and continue to maintain it, the teams. So why does the organizer always be like, nah, you don't get the spot. This player's the only one I care about. Well, okay, make your own team, daft cunt, sign Team Valve. Or you don't want to do that. Someone else has to pay his salary and fly him to all the events. What's going on here? Like, why is there no partnership between the dev and the orgs? Why do they treat it like I only care about the players? Which, by the way, I won't make a whole side rant, but that does tie into a trend that you continually see and is most ludicrously obvious in Overwatch, where they try to even pretend there is no pro scene, and that what happens is players get to the top of the matchmaking system and then become pros, and there's a amateur to pro ladder which doesn't exist in any esports game, by the way, but they continually lie and pretend to the wider world like that's what esports is. So I have to say it is part of a movement which is anti-team, the way that they deal with people.
So I don't know. I mean, is it as simple as that? Because we've talked about this before, that you have an independent ranking system, and the teams that are, say, the top 8,
okay,
that they're the invited teams to all major tier tournaments and the major itself.
Okay, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Imagine this scenario. Mm-hmm. So the major spot stays with the org that got the spot, but they also must keep at least 3 players, right? Now, in that scenario, if the players leave, they lose the spot. If the players, if the org is ever like, well, if you leave, we lose the spot. Like, well, that's unlikely you're going to want to do that. Obviously, if you're such an arsehole, the player will even be like, well, fuck it. What's the spot? If it means I still get to leave, at least, you know, you lose the spot as well. In that scenario, I think you have to negotiate almost, don't you? Wouldn't that be a better system than this?
Yeah, I think probably. I think that's the compromise, right? That it's like, if players leave...
Because then I feel like it incentivizes both to have to sort of work together, right? Because either you lose the spot or they lose the spot. You can both sort of fuck each other. It's like a prisoner's dilemma where you only can do the right option to win. You both have to agree to work together, basically. Yeah,
and as I said, I think the fact that there's been this irreconcilable breakdown here with the Immortals is quite telling, right? They're not on the bench. We know they're going somewhere else just as soon as the money comes in. And we also know that Noah Winston doesn't want them back in Immortals. He said, look, our values eclipse anything that we're going to get. But if they can just go to a major and you've already mentally accepted you're out, obviously those conclusions make total sense to arrive at, right? But if there was like a third way where it's like, hey, if we resolve this, and the pain was nobody gets the major slot, and instead you have like an open qualifier for that last slot, or you invite a team from a previous major, or however you'd work it out. I think it would encourage more reconciliations when you have these contract breakdowns.
And also another obvious solution, have some sort of a community commissioner who says, well, this is a very extreme example of this, so I'm actually going to take disciplinary action, and for being late for these tournaments and for doing these extracurricular things, this player loses his spot, or something like that, where it's so egregious that any judge would say, well, you no longer have this privilege of having a spot. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it would be a hard call on this one,
Yeah. So one other question I think's come in, and it's from Mateusz Pietkowski, another one of our $100 patrons. If you could buy out any contract, what is the best CIS team you could form? Alternatively, what is the best CIS team that is actually likely to be formed in the next 6 months? So, yeah, that's a good question, because we've talked about how there's all this talent in the CIS region, but everyone's locked into these egregious contracts. So I guess he's ultimately asking, what's your dream team from that region if you could pick five players? Okay.
So I'm obviously going to start with Simple, and then I would add Electronic. I think they're my star players. It's pretty obvious at this point in time.
Yeah. Simple as an AWPer, though.
Yeah, I'll let him do whatever he wants. If he wants to AWP, he wants to rifle, fine. Both fine. Yeah. I would add Adren, because I think Adren, by the way, if you have him as like the third best player, bearing in mind he already plays tough roles anyway, the guy's going to fucking kill it. So I've got to go on now with him. In-game leader's a tough one. I think he can go a long way, but I'd go with Angel personally. I like the idea of I think he's done good work. I think he's a very good player himself. Go with him.
Yeah. You've always liked Angel in the in-game leadership role. I mean, what you got to remember is that before Zeus went to Gambit, obviously Adren was doing it, so he could possibly do it, but
I've heard though that he doesn't like it though. That's the problem.
No, but I mean, he's doing it again now.
Yeah. But from when I spoke to him, it doesn't sound like he's a big fan of it.
Yeah,
I think it's just out of necessity,
Yeah, I can dig that. You are, so it's like who is there in game leadership wise? You got Zeus, you got
Blade, Angel.
Yeah, I couldn't justify Blade.
Nah, that's the problem. Same as the other position that's tough when you do it is like, who's going to be sort of your fourth player? Because at that point, it's going to have to be someone like fucking Mark Love, Edward. It's going to have to be one of these old guys, because there's not many people who sort of play that role well,
Well, I mean, Hobbit's got to be in.
He's pretty good, but the problem there is, I feel like Hobbit's someone where you want him to be one of your stars. So if we want Hobbit, probably he has to be instead of Electronic or something, or instead of Adren or something, So I don't know. Unless you're trying to make the CIS phase here, I feel like you kind of got too many stars.
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, the question didn't say we have to think about roles and chemistry.
Okay.
I mean, I'd definitely give it a spin. I think Hobbit's earned his fucking shot in the dream team right now. He's been good, revelatory. Yeah. Like from the moment they fucking took him on loan from that Kazakhstani team, he's been fucking god tier. Like.
And then I'd have as a sub, I'd have Shara. But what I'd do is, to get to the boot camp, he has to cross like a rickety wooden bridge, and then he has to scale up a wall with not many handholds, and
So, yeah, the in-game leader thing's tough for me, because I've obviously got my own biases. You build up biases over years of watching Counter-Strike and stuff. Obviously, I was a big fan of fucking Hooch when he was around, but there's no indication.
You were a big fan of Hooch, were you? Then you got your motherfucking life in order.
The Hooch, the player, Duncan.
Not the delicious lemon alcohol pop from the early 90s.
Yeah, which they don't make anymore. It's like...
no, they do now. It came back.
It came back.
Oh, Hooch is back.
Like shit, by the way.
Well, there you go. That's the sign. Stick Hooch in. But Angel's a better fragger. I don't know, dude. It's a hard one for me, the IGL position. Because they've all got their own quirks. I just don't think Angel's an amazing tactician. I don't think he's going to come up with any amazing strats, but he does pull his weight on the scoreboard, right? Easily. He's one of the best fragging in-game leaders in that region. You got Zeus. I mean, he's proven he can fucking take 4 disparate parts, bring them together and win a major. Biggest upset, in terms of major winners that there's ever been.
Yeah.
So he's obviously got clout. Hooch, incredible in-game leader when you think about the resources he had to work with down the years in 1.6 and stuff. It's a tough one, dude. I know. But yeah, Angel maybe. I might go with yours then.
That has to be easily the most fucked region, though. That is the region where there is no option for any of these teams, even in a dream world, to happen, because they're all bought and signed for at all levels by their orgs, and they've all signed the most ridiculous contracts ever fucking imaginable.
Well, yeah,
it's like the contract just says Seeker, and then they go, yes, sign it, and then fucking Dorsey just hands them some Beluga vodka, and they go, sound, or whatever the Russian version of that is.
I believe he says it a different way, Duncan. Right, yeah.
And then obviously they go, would you take a picture with my mum? And he goes, are you stripper? All that. Call back there.
Yeah, good callback. So that was the last question, I think, unless there was another one coming in. Was there? Oh, no, here we go. There's another one here. Jerky's Minion, a long-time supporter of the stream, goes way back to original By the Numbers and on my stream for many years. How can the Asian scene develop more than where it is currently at? And I think this is an interesting one because I think part of the issue is going to be that, as you said, there's never been any level of investment in it before, because why would you choose Counter-Strike? The partnership with Perfect World is huge for CS in general. Like, we're going to see another growth spike. We're going to see another wave of big investment come off the back of this, no doubt about it, which is why I've said it's important we get a handle on this match-fixing bullshit, because, I mean, the games are a disgrace in China right now. I think everybody knows it. I don't think I'm saying anything out of turn by pointing it out. But this is going to be the first time it's actually going to make sense to throw money at this particular game. They've always had like free-to-play FPSs in the region. Counter-Strike.
Speaking of which, by the way, I've just realised we did not address this. Remember what the entire very, very storm in a teacup drama that sparked that guy who Zeus's Twitter manager leaving was?
Oh.
He thought somehow it was inappropriate to mention that Zeus bottom fragging a game against his own team he owns in a qualifier is somehow like not news.
Yeah.
That would be like David Beckham buys a team, right? And he's playing against him in the team he's on. And then he just is fucking banging in like own goals in the top corner, like curling it in like, fucking hell, oh, bloody, what have I done? You know, my favourite part about that was the people whose criticism, someone who replied to DK and they were like, well, why would he be trying to, I think they said something like, why would he be trying to throw a game for his own team? It's like, so wait a minute, why would he throw a game from the team where all they do is pay him his salary, which he's getting anyway, so that his own team that he owns and makes everything from could qualify? Mystery to me, mate.
I mean, and obviously we're not saying it happened, but what we're saying
it's irrelevant. We have no clue whether it does or doesn't. That's the problem, right? Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't even have to investigate it.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, I think this is something that we're going to have to tackle en masse moving forward. I don't know how we're going to tackle it in China, because no one's going to have the clout in China to go in and fucking, you know, tackle it.
Obviously not. That goes without saying. Like, by the way, for anyone who doesn't realise, Valve won't have the clout to do that.
No.
Valve can ban you from a major because they run the major. But if you know anything about how China runs, like, it says it all that, like, Disney and Coca-Cola can't, like, maintain their copyrights in China. If they can't do it, you have no chance, you know.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. But to get back to the question, I think that we're going to see an unparalleled level of investment in the game in that region now. And the experience of European players moving across, coaches moving across, that's going to kickstart sort of a kind of revolution in terms of the overall skill level we're going to get out of Asian teams that hasn't really been there before. You know, there was a couple of outliers in 1.6, and certainly when 1.6 teams started doing well at 1.6 tournaments in China against the likes of Fnatic, you know, Tyloo again, and another team from back then, interest peaked up. You know, people started getting more and more interested in it, but it never really went anywhere. Now we've got a chance to bring those players out to China and actually be playing CS in that region and giving the wisdom of some of their experience to some low-level players and lower-level teams. That will definitely help. It helped. The only reason we have the MLS in America to the degree it is now is because those older players who certainly couldn't hack it in the Premier League or Serie A or La Liga, they went to the American leagues and showed people how to play fucking football. And now the MLS level is a lot higher. We've got fucking big attendances out here in America now. So yeah, I think you'll see something akin to that in CS. But I don't know if you agree with that.
I mean, to me, it's just all about getting that player base up. If the player base goes up enough, the rest of the esports machinery will kick into action. The teams will get all squads, all the big teams, and then, as I said, there'll actually be a spillover. Like, for example, events will have more money, so you'll have more foreign teams going to Chinese events, and then you'll have more players that go and play over there. Which, by the way, it will itself cross-pollinate. Like, if you have for example, if Hiko had just gotten some sick offer and gone to China instead, you'd at least get some NA fans who'd see a match on HLTV. Oh, 4 a.m, I'm up, no games on. Oh, Hiko's playing, maybe I'll watch. You'd get that sort of a globalized effect. So I do feel like there's an obvious market to be tapped there, but I think a few things still have to happen before it's going to really manifest.
Yeah. So that's the last question. So unless there's any other topic you want to address, Duncan, anything we might have missed?
What else is going on in the world? I mean, at the moment,
stand-up runs out of material.
What's weird at the moment, actually, is for all the complaints about lack of tournaments, there is kind of a bit of a lull in October, if you look. Yeah, it's not until towards the end of the month that you get, I think it's
it's all been fucking qualifiers,
yeah.
So online CS, yeah.
So actually, it hasn't gone as crazy as you seem, because obviously we had a couple of tournaments in a row, but now we've got a little bit of a lull until next week, obviously ELeague playoffs. So
and there was some good news for Virtus Pro, actually.
What's that then?
They managed to beat bloody Space Soldiers in a best of 5.
For what?
To retain their ECS spot. I mean, because Space Soldiers really would have wanted that fucking slot. You know what I mean? They've had some good results lately and been doing all right. They had all that drama with one of their players getting banned, which then got overturned. Loads of people were like, see, Turkish players are all cheats. And then ESL had to come out cap in hand and went, yeah, bloody hell. Got it wrong, lads. Sorry, won't happen again. So, but yeah, Virtus Pro holding on to their ECS slot's a big deal. Because obviously, remember, in ECS, there's, if I remember rightly, I think even in the European division, they do some sort of profit share / equity thing. So, look, let's be real. If Virtus Pro don't get invited to tournaments and don't hold on to their online online league spots, where are they going to go? They're not going to qualify for anything right now. So I think it is a big deal for Virtus Pro to sort of hang in there until they finally rebuild the team. You know what I mean? Because that's definitely what needs to happen at this stage. But still gave up 2 maps against Space Soldiers. Conceivably, if it had been a best of 3, they're out. So the misery would have continued. But that's it then. So I will read our title sequence. What have we got? Right, because it's changed. Because we had a little spike in people donating to the Patreon, which obviously thanks very much. So Chris N. Wynn, he's the big dog with $380 donated. Dean Tanglis, Big Hungry, Mateus Pietkowski, Detlef Insomniac, I think he's changed his name, Jerky's Minion, and in the $50 patrons, Funky Boy, Tim Douglas, Saad Sawar, Marcus Kujunpar, Humongous Watt, Carl Oscar Garcia Firm, Marius Joris Sund, and William Southern. So thanks to all of them, and of course thanks to everybody else who chipped in a buck or two, all the people who subscribed and followed the channel and everything else over the course of the broadcast, and that's where we're going to end it. So hope you enjoyed this episode of By the Numbers. Next week, I'll remember, we'll be on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, because Sam's doing an extra day's freelance work because he needs the money, because he's in love with a fucking Coco.
Sound.
And then don't remove that.
And also, I'll be going to Brazil. I'd like to announce.
Yeah. Bizarrely, he's now joined the scouting team for Immortals.
Jesus Christ!
Listen, I'll hit the clubs. You take the libraries.
So time.
Sorry, got a cold.
Yeah, time to get me out of here. This is By the Numbers. We'll see you next time. Take care.